Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Turning Towards Life. This is Lizzie and Justin at Thirdspace, and we're here on our usual Sunday morning. Me from London and Justin from looks like sunny Dorset in the UK. And we are really glad to be here and bringing you this amazing source by Thomas Burton today that you might have seen on Facebook or Instagram. And as you know, each week we come with something. We come with an offering that we put between us, and then we see what emerges in the conversation when we bring it to our attention and to our reflection together in conversation. And so each week we have this practice, and we know that many of you are in this practice with us. And I want to appreciate what that is for us all and what it does for us all. And just to say how very much included we are in that. And I think I've said this before, but even if it was just you and I, Justin, sitting here being in the conversation with each other, we would probably still want to do it. But because there are other people here, we're really supported in definitely doing it. And we actually turn up and we do it no matter what. And you sitting there, Justin, somewhere other than your home, reminds me of the beginning days of this, where we just began and our lives were way more all over the place than this year, which is 2021. And in 2020 also, we've been confined really to our homes. But in the beginning, we were sitting on doorsteps and being in all kinds of places, depending on what our lives were up to. And I feel very glad that there's a glimpse of that happening again, and you're in a different place with a different background. And so I just want to acknowledge our kind of journey through this and how stable our Sundays have been because of lockdown and because of the pandemic. But also life might be, who knows what's going to happen next. But, you know, you're sitting in Dorset, which is different than before. And I was in Cornwall last week, and things are feeling a little more open than they were before. And I just remember so clearly, I don't know how many, I think it must have been 3 years ago now, when I think I was in Falmouth or something, sitting on a doorstep in the rain with a massive sailing jacket on in some kind of back of pub doorstep. And it was like raining really hard, and I was in an alleyway. And I just feel so appreciative of the kind of everyday ongoing commitment that this is, and that we always turn up. It's quite amazing to me.
Lizzie, before I say anything else, because we're in this Clubhouse experiment as well, you need to join the room on. So good morning, everyone. Yes, we're experimenting with different kinds of technology at the moment. So we've got, of course, our live stream on Facebook, as we always do, and we've got recordings going out on pretty much all the podcast places you could imagine, and recording later on YouTube and on Instagram. And we're also experimenting with this audio app, Clubhouse, which is in the world as well, and putting these conversations out that way. So hence the little kerfuffle getting ourselves going with that. Yeah, Lizzie, before we get into sources, I'm really reflecting on what you just said about the different places that we've done this, and the different ways that life has been over the last year or so as well. And I can think of times where I've sat under a tree in a park with tethering to the 4G on my phone, and try to find a little space in a conference center, or a stairwell in somewhere that we're running a course, or a cupboard. Indeed, we've done that too, from cupboards or on the beach. And the truth is that we've managed to do this every week for 191 weeks, regardless of where we were and what else has been going on in our lives. And it's miraculous to have a practice like this. I think it's miraculous to have a practice that is so life-giving, and I know is shared by many other people as well. But also, for me, there's really something about the consistency of doing this, and doing this with you, being in relationship in a practice. And I know that being in a practice alongside you is a big part of what makes it possible to stay in. Like, I get up and make sure I'm ready for 9 o'clock in the morning every Sunday because you're going to be here. And also because it feels like a commitment to other people as well, all of you who listen. And it just has me reflect on how much other people can be the ground for us having practices in our lives that are life-giving. that are harder to do when we try to do them completely on our own, and that relationship is the necessary container for all of this. So I'm very, very glad to be in that network of relationships with people I know, you and others I know, but there are many of you, I'm talking to all of us who are part of this conversation, many of you who are listening who I've never met, we've never met, and we feel held by you as well. I know. So,
absolutely.
So as every week, we have a source, a seed for our conversation. I always think of them as like sources for a river, actually. And this week comes from Thomas Merton, and I found this piece of text actually not directly from Thomas Merton's work, but by reading Parker Palmer, his work I love. Mm-hmm. And Lizzie, this one I've been carrying around with me for months, waiting for the week when it was going to come into our orbit. So I'll read it, and then I guess you'll read it and we'll talk. So for any of you who are listening to this later, you can always find the source on our website, turningtowards.life, where, by the way, you can flick back and see all the different places, Lizzie, that you and I have sat on doorsteps and under trees and everything, because all the videos are there. And we also post it alongside the text, the information with every podcast episode, and on Instagram as well. There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralises our work for peace. It destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful.
There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralises our work for peace. It destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful.
So Lizzie, there's a whole load of things present for me all at once in reading this. And I think what struck me most, was most helpful and most painful about reading these words of Thomas Merton's when I first came across them and now, is to see that, and I agree with him on this, that very often what we allow ourselves to be swept up in, that feels righteous, is in fact a form of violence to ourselves and other people that we unwittingly take part in. And my best example of this actually involves you, Lizzie, and you'll know this story. But for such a long time, it seemed really self-evident to me that in order to be a good person in the world, I ought to do everything for everybody all the time. I ought to be doing everything. And that if I ever let anybody else in, I would somehow be being terribly irresponsible. That was, and I wouldn't even say that I ever thought about it this way. I think it was just sort of built into my whole way of doing things. And there were years when we were running courses and programs and stuff where I took everything on myself in order to free everybody from everything else, and felt at once, and I think this is the root of the violence that Thomas Merton talks about, at once I felt like, okay, now I'm doing the right thing, now I'm a proper person, at the same time unbelievably overburdened, panicky, afraid, terrified, ashamed. But part of the whole construct was, I can't show anybody that because it's my job to, because I'm doing something that's important here. It's my job to hold it all. And anyway, none of this ever entered into conscious thought. It was expressed for me in a way of being. And you said to me one day, I keep on trying to help you and you ask me for help, but by the time you told me that by the time you came to do anything, I'd done it already, and that it was really annoying. And that was such an incredibly confronting and wonderful thing to hear, because it started to puncture the sort of the self-evident self-righteousness of this carrying everything that I had. And I love that Thomas Merton calls it violence. I love it, because he points out that in the name of what we're really committed to, or what we think we ought to be doing, we can cut ourselves off from our own aliveness and the possibility of being enlivened by the aliveness of others, because we haven't yet developed the capacity either to say no to other people and their requests, which has been a big thing for me to learn as well. But we also haven't learned to say no to ourselves and our uncertainty that I must sort of somehow eat myself up in the pursuit of the thing that I'm here to do or that I'm committed to. And it's such a relief to have Thomas Merton to say, don't do that. And to have you say to me, don't do that. Stop eating yourself alive from the inside and other people in the process by carrying on in this way.
Gosh, the thing, as so often in these conversations, Justin, the thing that emerges for me is it's like right on the edge of my understanding. And so I'm struggling to find a coherent way of saying this. But what I can see in the listening of Thomas Merton, but also in what you're saying as well, is that if we do this, it removes all of our chances of feeling the fruit of our work as well. Like there's something about the violence of the overwork, of the idealism, of the taking everything on, of the being overly responsible, that thing, saying yes to everything, everyone, which removes the chance of the intention we have even being fulfilled, because it kills the root, as he says, of the inner wisdom, which makes the work fruitful. So somehow when we're up to this, saying yes all the time and overextending ourselves and taking too much on and doing so much, in a way, our intention is to be fulfilled. Our intention is, as you said, to do important work in the world and to, fulfill our purpose or something. And we have such good intentions. And because the world is the way that it is, and our kind of cultural narratives of overdoing everything and progress and more, and all of that stuff is so pervasive, our intention kind of gets smothered in terms of it being a realistic and real experience for us to feel fulfilled by the thing that we're doing. Because actually we just feel pulled in 100 different directions and spread too thinly and stressed and, all over the shop, which of course is not an experience of feeling your work from the inside and letting that expression be the thing that then also fills you up, which could be a way different definition of what work is, to bring our inner wisdom to the world, to include ourselves and our capacities and consider ourselves in everything, so that we are energized, we're fruitful, we're vibrant, we're ready for life, rather than kind of bedraggled and strung out. And there's there's a way that we're so dissipated and scattered and hanging on by our fingernails. Like if one of my fingernails slips, everything's going to fall apart because I'm holding so much. And then to slow down and to receive our lives, actually be participant in a way that we're part of it rather than holding it out in front of us or something, but that we're right in our lives, in receipt of it, just feels like a deeply important thing to have considered and have some mastery over by the time that we leave these bodies. Otherwise, what would it have all been for? If we didn't receive our lives, if we didn't receive the fruit of that got made by the root of our inner, what we have to bring to the world, our inner Lizziness, our inner Justinness, that we didn't bring that and be in receipt of it, feels like a really big violence, like a high level human violence to have lived and to have not lived. And it reminds me, this week, Justin, I know you and I have been very moved by our lovely colleague Amanda's Thirdspace newsletter. So we send something out each month to everyone, and Amanda was writing about death because her father-in-law passed away. And the bit that really moved me was she mentioned Francis Weller's work on grief. And his invitation is to let death find us alive. And this is what this is. It's that when it is our time to leave, that we leave because we were found alive, not because we were found already gone, already spent, but that we live a life that's not kind of a dwindling exhaustion led life, but a kind of we live, boom, we die. And I just feel so invited in this moment by allowing my life to be filled with this invitation, and that we do have a capacity for inner peace. We can work genuinely for peace because we're not strung out in all kinds of different ways that leave us depleted and affecting other people in not great ways, probably because of our stressedness and our tension and our constriction and our idealistic, maybe perfectionist ways that remove this orientation to peace.
Really touched, Lizzie, by what you said about the difference between the work that we do in the world, whatever it is we get up to, doing whatever we can to have it feed us as we go, rather than strangle us or poison us. And I think that much of the sort of surrounding cultural narrative about work is that whatever else we say, that work ought to exhaust us.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of badge of, I work with a wonderful group of people at the moment in an amazing organization where they've got lots to do. And I notice how readily everyone goes in this day where people are meeting on Zoom because they can't so easily meet in person. How everyone says, oh yeah, well, of course, I'm exhausted because I started really early this morning and I've been speaking to other people on Zoom right up until the hour, and then the next thing happens the next hour, and that's just how it is. Like everything is backing into everything else. And they're extraordinary, committed people. And there's a part of me that these days gets horrified when I hear this, because I can feel how it's part of the contemporary narrative of violence to ourselves, it's okay just to keep on sort of squeezing ourselves dry. That's a noble thing to do, which is exactly what Thomas Merton's talking about. And you said this such a moving thing, which was, what if the point of our work is that we get to bring our wisdom and our aliveness and our full resourcefulness to bear. We allow life, that our work is a way that we can allow life to flow through us and to reach other people, rather than a way that we burn ourselves up in a sort of all-consuming fire and leave ourselves, like you said, and like Francis Weller said, dead to life long before we're actually physically dead. And I know for me, every time I encounter this, there's a part of me that has been so shaped by our wider cultural narrative that work should be sacrificed. I don't mean that work, I'm not talking about work being hard or stretching or really calling on us or us being generous. I'm not talking about any of those things. I'm talking about the story that what we're here to do is to sacrifice. And that this goes far beyond, the thing that I'm getting in contact with now is it goes far beyond each of us. So yes, I mean, I sort of can make an argument that wouldn't it be better for my life and my experience if I didn't get into the frenzy of activism that Thomas Merton talks about? I'd be much happier maybe and all of that stuff. But I'm actually thinking about it on the scale of our communities and the scale of our societies, and on a global scale, which is the extent to which we are in our frenzy cutting ourselves off from the wisdom that's called for to respond to one another and to the world. That's a giant price to be paying for the story of going faster all the time, or more. And so I know that I'm finding that being really deliberate about having ways that can settle my own nervous system, so I'm not continually pumping myself up into the mobilization of there's more to do, there's more to do, there's more to do, there's more to do, and there is always more to do. I mean, I can think of 3 lifetimes or 10 lifetimes of things to do now, which are really important to do, and they're all important. But as I'm talking to you, Lizzie, I'm getting onto the bodily part of it, which is that I know, at least for me, it's really, really easy for me to have this inner frenzy going on. And I might, if I'm not onto it, I might present as together and considered and all of those things that for one reason or another became important to me in sort of my formation and my way of being. And they're certainly not the only ways to be, but I can look that way whilst inside being consumed by the anxiety of, when I'm like that, not only can I not bring my own wisdom, but I also can't meet people deeply. Like when I'm that way, when I'm in the frenzy of self-violence, other people really become interruptions or irritations or some kind of project that I've got to get done, rather than a deep and genuine meeting with other humans. And there's so much letting go and slowing down required to make that possible, so that we don't just undo the violence to ourselves, but we undo the violence we do to others by treating one another as if we were just sort of pieces of the machinery or pieces of the project I'm trying to get done.
Gosh, Justin, the thing that just really kind of took me from what you were saying, I always wanted to stop you and make you say it again, but I'm going to have to find a way of articulating it myself. Was the bit where you said, if we're in this way of doing and participating in the violence, that, as it's called here, in this way, what if us doing that removes the chances of us listening to what the world is calling for from us, which would be our work? So, and you said that was a really big price to pay. I was just thinking, my goodness, what if that is the undoing that we're all really in need of, the world is in need of, in order for us to be able to respond? So, recently I've been feeling that everyone's complaining, like everyone's got a problem about something. Everyone's annoyed with the way the government's dealt with this pandemic. Everyone's frustrated with something that's going on in the world that's not what they want, whatever is kind of societally, globally happening at the moment. But all of us feel really powerless to do anything about it. Like there seems to be so much commentary, but so few people who are actually doing things by comparison to the swathe of all of us. And I've been watching that and wondering, what is it that has us all be commentators, but not actually participating in our real work? You know, and I wonder about the correlation between when I'm not up to the attending to my inner wisdom that allows the root of my giftedness to come forth in the world, when I'm not doing that, how that kind of goes hand in hand with not with being a commentator about everything. So in a position where I'm overworked and where I'm overstretched and I've got such a narrative of nobility, what if that's massive distraction? And it's like a hard thing to kind of get my head around to say, but it's like, if I'm so focused on this narrative of busyness and nobility and being responsible and all of that stuff, what if what's not getting attended to is the thing that the world actually needs, rather than me commentating from the place that I'm not supposed to be really sitting anyway? And then if I would turn towards peace, inner wisdom, spaciousness, what's mine to bring to the world, given what the world is calling for now, all my commentating kind of becomes relevant then, rather than just noise. You know, all of the things we see really matter. All of the things we feel about what's going on really matter. And how might I turn towards that which I'm unhappy about and really examine what that is with this spaciousness, and put down the narrative of busyness and doing, but really turn towards what's calling me, given what I'm thinking and feeling about life and the world and people. And then the bit where you said about each other and who we then become to each other when we do that, when we turn towards this less speed, less doing, more presence and contactfulness and sensitivity and attention to what's here already, rather than what I think is going to come if I keep doing what I'm doing. If I turn towards that, who do we become for each other? And maybe that's what the world needs, is something where we're more contactful, more in relationship, more interdependent with one another, less separate. And then I start getting kind of really wondering about what these big old meta narratives that we're all in are really robbing us of as a collective.
Yeah, the thing that's, a couple of things coming to me from what you just said, Lizzie. One is, maybe you have the same thing happens in your life, but because I do coaching and teach coaching, and very often people get in contact and say, hi, I'd like to be your client, or I'd like to speak to you about this or whatever. And I can feel in me the wish to respond to everyone. And part, this sort of activism that Thomas Merton talks about, part of me really does want to respond to everyone. But I can also see, I could feel as you were speaking, how much saying no to my own, the obviousness of my own pattern is called for. Because actually I've started saying to people, no, I'm not available. And it feels terrible to do, but so necessary to not be available to everyone all the time, and to say, not now. So anyway, that was present, was, I think, I know what this was that was coming up for me, was how important this is and how difficult this is. How much it takes, how much attention it takes, but also how much support it takes. So you may have seen this, that our friend Sophie wrote to us after I posted this source and said, the thing about Thomas Merton is that he really struggled with this as well. That he could write about this, not because he had this sorted, but because he was caught up in this very pattern that he's writing about again and again and again and again and again. He couldn't, as far as I understood from what Sophie said, he couldn't get on top of it himself alone. That he was in a monastery, and the abbot of the monastery needed to keep saying to him, Thomas, you need to slow down. Mm-hmm. You need the very thing that you're writing about is the thing that's yours to do. And that maybe it's too much to ask of ourselves, that could be another form of violence, that we go, well, now, okay, I get this and I agree with it and it seems right. Now I've got to solo be the one who's strong enough to interrupt my own patterns of overwork and activism. And actually, I think we need one another. Yeah. I think we need, just like I needed you to come and tell me what was true, I think we need one another to be truthful with one another about what we see. But we also, what really helps is having other people that we can be in shared practices of shifting the way that we live and work. So times to slow down together, for example, where you know that other people are going to be present. Communities of practice. Having people who will be intimates with us, who will be buddies with us in this project of having our own peace and wisdom be the root and the root of all the work we do, rather than our frantic, consuming, overproducing selves. Yeah. And this conversation, for example, is one of those for me, that we really slow down in this conversation, that we don't rush, that we don't interrupt one another, and that we take our time and we are unhurried in speaking to one another. Is one part of that.
Yeah. Gosh, that thing about Thomas Merton and the comment that Sophie made feels so important. And I find it so inspiring that he didn't know how to do this, and yet he still brought his gift. So I think one of the narratives we have as humans is like, if I'm not walking my talk, and if I'm not perfectly doing the thing I'm doing, I have no right to talk to anyone else about that. I have no right to make a film about it. I have no right to write a poem about it. It's like, I have to be perfect before I can do that. And it's just not that. It's just not that. It's like, if we could turn towards the very thing that we struggle with and bring forth the fruit of that, the reflection on that, the honesty around it, that is probably our work. And so the violence that we have with ourselves in that way is the same kind of violence, which is, well, I'm an idealist about myself, and therefore the thing I'm experiencing can't be my gift. It has to be something else, because I whatever this shame is that I'm experiencing can't be my gift. I have to get rid of that before I can do the thing I'm supposed to do. It's like, well, no, what if what's happening is the gift? What if your experience that you're having is the gold, and that you're having that experience because it's yours to bring here? And I really feel like that's such an important thing that somehow we've got taught way out of in our world. And the fact that we've understood that Thomas struggled with this, it just makes me admire him, that he didn't manage this, and he didn't let that stop him from bringing the gift that he wanted to bring, which is a reflection on this. And it's such a big standard that we hold for each other, that we have to be doing the thing well in order to say anything about it, instead of coming at it in our beginnerness, in our curiosity, in our, oh yeah, I'm really failing at this, but I'm still going to speak about it, and I'm still going to try and be in conversation about it and bring this to the world somehow. So I'm feeling really glad of Thomas Merton's incompleteness, because of course we're all incomplete, however much we project completeness onto anyone who brings wise things or does, we're all completely incomplete and imperfect, and nobody knows what goes on behind the scenes of another person, no matter how well established they are or how well written something is. It's like we've got huge, big, mysterious, ancestral ancestrally impacted, messy lives. And we have to keep bringing our gifts.
What a fabulous place to end, Lizzie. Thank you. That our very attempts at perfectionism in everything, even perfectionism in bringing forth our inner capacity for peace, can be the very kind of violence that Thomas Merton talks about. And such an invitation, what you just said, for us to be humble and in the struggle and messiness of being a human, and then to keep on bringing ourselves generously. Thank you for saying it that way. Well, it's such a joy to be doing this and to be able to do this from wherever we are. And I want to say thank you to all of you, everyone who's accompanying us, whether you've just started accompanying us recently or you've been with us for a long time. And you're so welcome to tell other people about Turning Towards Life as well, of course. And all being well, we will be live again in our Facebook group at 9 a.m. UK time next Sunday morning, and you're very welcome to join that group, or you can find us in all the usual podcast and Instagram and YouTube places later. And we'll see you then.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.